This is Business Equity and Opportunities, and it's time to talk about the week in business. Kiran Ahuja serves as the director of the U.S. Office of Personnel Management, or OPM. Spent more than 2 decades in public service and executive nonprofit work before President Biden nominated her to become the first South Asian American and first Asian American woman to lead the OPM. We talked with her during a visit to Indianapolis about some of the federal opportunities available here.
This is Business, Equity, and Opportunities. This Week in Business.
We were created a number of years back to manage the federal workforce, to set policies, to ensure that we employ what we call the merit system, merit-based hiring. And so we actually govern and create policies that are agencies have to follow. So we put a little bit of those kind of guardrails on what it means to create a workforce, a civil service workforce that is governed by the kind of qualifications they bring in into the federal government, their expertise, how we want to utilize them to support the American public. So we're kind of the HR arm of any business, but for the largest employer in the country, 2.2 million individuals. And so we also support agencies to help with building out their workforce, managing their workforce. And a perfect example is here in Indiana, you have probably about more than $4 billion from infrastructure investments, 200 plus projects. So before that could go out the door, agencies had to build the staff inside their agencies in order to get those dollars and those programs set up. That's what we do, help them, give them the ability and the tools and the manpower to take what is a pretty significant project and make sure it comes to fruition. The federal workforce and federal agencies are an important employer here in Indiana and Indianapolis. We have 26,000 federal employees in Indiana, 13,000 in Indianapolis alone. So we're thinking about that a lot. We're thinking about recruiting more of those individuals into the federal government and enticing them by all hosts of things regarding the kinds of experiences that they can have in the federal government. We'd like to say we win on mission. So I think oftentimes if you talking to business owners, right, they're thinking about how they can advertise and promote their job opportunities. But I also think it's a brand issue as well, at least for the federal government, maybe similarly for larger sized employers. I think for us, we have to compete with the private sector. And I think in our minds, we do that in a few different ways, which is we remind people about the mission and the kind of work that you can do in the federal government. We say that you can find a federal version of every dream job in the federal government. Literally every occupation is found in the federal government. And now we have these workplace flexibilities where right now there's about 2,000 jobs that people can apply to in Indiana, whether they're based here or remote. So these opportunities are far and wide. Federal employees are in every county in the country. So I think we think about what's our brand, how we market, what are the benefits, opportunities for growth, especially for Gen Z. If we think about that in particular, I think they're very demanding, as they should be, around the work experience they want to have. And I would say finally also people care about an inclusive work environment. They care about the commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion. And that's been a big part of how we think about our work. We want to make sure our workforce reflects the diversity that we see around us. We want individuals to feel like they can bring their whole selves to their work. And then they have a supportive work environment. And I think if employers think about that full package, not only like what's the meaningful experience you're going to have, but what's the work environment you're going to come into, because we spend so many hours at our jobs. Yes, we should have all different voices, but we also need those early in their careers to really come in and help us build the bench within our organizations. So I think, the mix of the pandemic being a disruptor, workers just reevaluating what they want in a job. And I think employers have to speak to that, both in the kind of experience, the flexibilities, the new talent coming in. So it's a mix of the disruptor, and I also think this newer generation just sees jobs in a very different way. And I think it's important that we listen to what they want. So I think oftentimes I'll say for myself, I think it's important to have representation, so leaders of all different types of backgrounds. I think you have a workforce that comes in, they want to see that they are going to have a good experience, they're going to continue to have professional growth, they're going to have a good work environment, and they're going to see a pathway for themselves in that job. And if they don't, they will likely go somewhere else. So I think for us, those are kind of the basic principles around what's the type of environment. It should be inclusive. There should be opportunities for growth. We also want to ensure that I think one thing that we do very well in the federal government is pay transparency and pay equity. The gender wage gap generally is about 17%, and in the federal workforce is less than 6%. In our senior executive service, there's no gender gap. We have equivalent of about equal male female, and there is no gender wage disparity in that group as well. I think we certainly want to ensure and do better around further diversity and representation across the board of different communities. But I think it's important that we show that we want leaders of different backgrounds. We think it's important to have that within a business, because in many ways those perspectives help us make good business decisions. You're not just having someone who agrees and thinks the exact same thing that you do. I often say, like, if you're going to agree with me around a table, a conference table, then we've got a problem, right? Because to really tackle a solution, we need to look at it from all different angles.
This Week in Business is made possible by InnoPower.
Also this week in business, entries are open and tickets go on sale for TechPoint's highly anticipated 25th anniversary Mira Awards, honoring the best of tech in the state. Named after a star, the Mira Awards Gala recognizes excellence and innovation in 18 different award categories. There are spots available for judges, volunteers, partners, sponsors. Entry deadline is January 19th. If your business has an event you'd like us to mention on our show, send us an email 3 weeks ahead of time at veo@wishtv.